The morning mist still clung to the rolling fells of the Lake District on June 2nd, 2010, a day that promised the quiet, pastoral peace this corner of England is famous for. But beneath the surface of the sleepy village of Rora, a storm of paranoia and resentment was reaching its breaking point. A 52-year-old taxi driver named Derrick Bird was preparing to turn the lush, green valleys of Cumbria into a corridor of terror. What began as a private family dispute would soon explode into a 3-hour rampage that would leave a community broken and the entire nation in a state of collective shock. Before we continue with this harrowing journey through the Lake District, remember to comment, like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of The Calendar of Crime. Your support helps us keep these stories alive and honor the memories of those lost. Derrick Bird was known to most as Birdie, a quiet, unassuming man who had spent years navigating the narrow lanes of West Cumbria in his taxi. To his neighbors, he was a divorced father of 2, a man who kept to himself but was generally seen as harmless. However, behind closed doors, Bird was a man consumed by a mounting sense of persecution. He had become convinced that he was facing an imminent prison sentence due to an ongoing investigation by HM Revenue and Customs. He believed a sum of £60,000 in his bank account would be his undoing, and his mind began to spiral into a dark place where he saw enemies in every corner. The fuse was lit by a combination of financial fear and a simmering family rift. Bird believed his twin brother, David, and the family solicitor, Kevin Commons, were conspiring against him to ensure he went to jail for tax evasion. On the night of June 1st, the tension reached a lethal peak. Bird spent his final hours of freedom visiting friends, his behavior increasingly erratic, before returning home to prepare for the violence he was about to unleash. He armed himself with a 12-gauge double-barreled shotgun and a .22 caliber rifle fitted with a telescopic sight and silencer, weapons he legally owned as a licensed gun holder. The massacre began in the early hours of June 2nd, at the home of his twin brother David, in the village of Lamplugh. In a chilling act of fratricide, Derrick shot David several times while he lay in bed. There was no struggle, only the cold execution of a brother he had once shared a womb with. From there, Bird drove to the nearby home of Kevin Commons, the solicitor he blamed for his legal woes. He ambushed Commons on his driveway, firing multiple shots as the man tried to flee. With the 2 men he considered his primary tormentors dead, Bird's focus shifted from targeted revenge to a broader, more chaotic release of rage. Shortly after 10 a.m., Bird arrived at the taxi rank on Duke Street in Whitehaven, a place where he had spent countless hours waiting for fares. He called over a fellow driver, Darren Rewcastle, a man he had frequently argued with over queue jumping. In broad daylight and in front of horrified witnesses, Bird shot Rewcastle at point-blank range, killing him instantly. He then turned his weapon on other colleagues, wounding several as they scrambled for cover. The quiet taxi driver had vanished, replaced by a cold-blooded killer, who was now driving through the town center, firing out of his car window at anyone who caught his eye. The horror then moved south toward the village of Egremont. Bird was no longer looking for specific targets. He was shooting at the very fabric of the community. Susan Hughes, a 57-year-old woman walking home with her shopping bags, was his next victim. She was shot in the back as she walked along the pavement. Minutes later, Kenneth Fishburne, a retired worker, was killed while walking near a bridge. The randomness of the killings added a layer of profound terror. There was no logic to who lived and who died, only the cruel geography of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. As Bird continued his journey through the picturesque countryside, the death toll rose. He drove through Gosforth, where he killed 64-year-old Isaac Dixon, a part-time council worker, who was simply chatting with a farmer. He then encountered Gary Purdom, a talented local rugby player, who was working in a field near his father's farm. Bird pulled over, called Gary toward the car, and shot him. The killer was moving with a terrifying efficiency, navigating the backroads he knew so well to evade the police, who were now desperately trying to track his movements across the vast, rural landscape. The seaside village of Seascale became the site of some of the day's most heartbreaking scenes. Bird drove along the seafront, firing at residents and tourists alike. Jane Robinson, a 66-year-old woman delivering leaflets, was shot and killed. Michael Pike, a 64-year-old grandfather out on his bicycle, was another victim of Bird's senseless rage. In Seascale alone, several lives were extinguished in a matter of minutes. The local police had issued a stay indoors warning, but for many, the warning came too late as the silver Citroën Picasso sped through their quiet streets. By now, the police response was in full swing, but the challenges were immense. Cumbria is a region of winding roads, thick forests, and isolated hamlets, making it difficult to pin down a mobile shooter. Armed response units were scrambled from across the north of England, and helicopters circled overhead, but Bird remained one step ahead. The public was gripped by a paralyzing fear as news of the shooting spread via radio and word of mouth. Schools were locked down, shops shuttered their doors, and the idyllic Lake District felt like a war zone. The Rampage finally began to reach its grim conclusion as Bird's car, damaged and with a flat tire, reached the village of Boot in the Eskdale Valley. He abandoned the vehicle and fled into a wooded area known as Hinning House Woods. Behind him, he left a trail of 12 dead and 11 injured. The manhunt intensified as officers converged on the woods, but they would not find a defiant killer. At approximately 1:40 p.m., police discovered Bird's body. He had taken his own life with his rifle, ending the massacre on his own terms, and leaving behind a trail of questions that could never be fully answered. In the aftermath, the community of West Cumbria was left to pick up the pieces of a shattered existence. The scale of the tragedy led to a national debate on gun control, specifically regarding the licensing of private firearms. While the UK already had some of the strictest gun laws in the world, following the Hungerford and Dunblane massacres, the Derrick Bird case highlighted the difficulty of predicting when a law-abiding gun owner might snap. Memorials were held in the affected villages, and the resilience of the Cumbrian people was praised. But the scars of June 2nd, 2010, remain deeply etched into the landscape. Thanks for watching. Please comment, share, like, and subscribe for future episodes from the Calendar of Crime.